Oh, I saw this. This is really funny. If you're going to commit suicide anyway, there's a super easy way to die a hero. The people yearn for American jihad. There was also a hater that made an American jihad post about, what's his face? The liberal guy, not Armand. The one I was defending earlier. The one Will Stancil. There's a really funny collage that one of his haters made about Will Stancil. And it's really funny because like it's actually kind of cool. It makes him look dope. They made him into like a Hamas poster, basically. I don't think it was a hater law. I thought it was a hater post, but maybe it's not. The Minnesotan jihad. Oh, here it is. Do you think you will enter paradise without Allah proving which of you truly struggled for his cause and patiently endured? I downloaded this onto my phone. I will be using this in the future. Just get ready. Okay. This is white boy jihad. Woke Sharia, straight up. I think there is something to be said about annoying liberals on the timeline that everybody associates with like some of the worst excesses of liberalism, who actually, when push comes to shove, will do the right thing. I will always have a special place in my heart for liberals who might be ideological opponents of mine, who actually, when push comes to shove, will go out there and put their bodies on the line. Will Stancil is one of those liberals. He is endlessly annoying, but I will never hold that against him when I see him doing shit like this. And all of these cowardly little white supremacist babies on the internet are actually making fun of Will Stancil for doing something that they would never even remotely entertain.
Shooting at me. Bunch of dogs! Oh, you stupid dogs! What are you doing? Hey!
What are you doing?
Arrest these guys! They're coming for us! They're coming for us! What are you doing?
That's my lion.
You killed someone, not
Our side is making fun of him? No one. As a matter of fact, I've seen 0 people on the left make fun of Will Stancil. No, we are riding with Will Stancil. Critical support for Will Stancil, 100%. Like, Jeremiah Johnson doesn't do any of that shit and is still chirping about the left, right? Will Stancil, on the other hand, is at least out. If you're out there, I'm not going to hate on you, okay? Like, you, 100%. 100%. If you're out there, if you're getting tear gassed, look, as someone who's been out there, let me tell you, it's not exactly a walk in the park, okay? You're doing that to support your community. You're doing that to support your neighbors. You're doing rapid response. I will always ride for you. I don't give a
us! You killed someone! Oh, who gives a crap? I got a gas mask! I don't care!
My king.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
They're shooting at me.
Yeah, 100%. Look, Cinemarxism is probably my number one op in the anarchist side, okay? He is Mr. Moral Consistency to the maximum, even when sometimes it's, I think, a little unproductive to develop political allegiances. And yet Cinemarxism is here, giving props to Will Stancil, saying he's doing a lot more than all 90% of leftists who all they do is post, okay? Bro, he's not your op. He talks you up all the time. Who? Will Stancil? He does? Maybe I'm mistaking him with Armand Dowalewski or whatever. This one. These are both. I think that's my confusion here, because for me, these two guys are the same. Oh, Cinemarxism. Yeah, no, I'm joking. He's not my op, dude. What the? It's a joke. Chatters, I'm joking. He's not my op. That is a joke because he's an anarchist, and jokes are bourgeois decadence. Jokes are counter-revolutionary. Jokes are ableist. But you should know that I'm joking. On the off chance, if I ever die in some horrible tragedy, I hope even the people who hate me the most won't drag up my bad tweets to explain why I deserve to die. Honestly, I hope they do this to me. I want to die like I lived. Come spit on my grave, idiots. I'm waiting for you in hell. Will was garbage on Gaza in the election, but since ICE, he has emerged as a true lion. Exactly. Bro, by the end of this process, he's going to be pro-Hamas, dude. Like, this is a tweet that I saw. Maybe now y'all understand how Hamas was elected and ultimately ... Like, that's the whole point. Yeah, will be like, oh my God, why are Palestinians resisting militarily? Not realizing that, like, those are Palestinians, bro. Sure, there's like internal division amongst them as far as like their own personal domestic affairs, their own governance. There are plenty of Palestinians who are way more woke than Hamas in general and find their administrative duties to be somewhat incompetent, or don't like some of the Islamism, at least from my conversations with Palestinians, but you won't hear them talk shit about Hamas, while Hamas is the only one holding up arms against Israel. And not only that, but also on top of that, they've been able to coalesce all of the Palestinian resistance, regardless of ideological differences, over and over again. So Hamas has been suppressing democracy. That's funny. Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. I know. Yeah, no, I think it's really... I feel like maybe I'm a little crazy, but I feel like it's the genocide that's doing that a little bit more than Hamas. You know, as we have Western leadership here talking about who is going to be the colonial rulers of Gaza openly on the timeline at Davos, all of these other places. And you're over here being like, Hamas is suppressing democracy. Like, what democracy? Hamas actually was elected into power the last time America allowed them to have a democratic process. And by them, I mean Palestinians. That was George W. Bush. George W. Bush was like, Israel, you got to let them do a democratic process. You got to let them do elections. And Israel was like, oh, no. And then George W. Bush was like, no, you got to do it. And at the time, if you remember, because I used to talk about this all the time, talking about the history and this stuff, the history of like Palestinian democracy and what has taken place. At the time, the aligned, the State Department affiliated group obviously was what basically became, not became, but what was the neutered version of not PLO, but like specifically the forces of Fatah. And Fatah was telling George W. Bush, do not set up elections. Everybody hates our shit. Everybody hates our ass. If you do elections, we will lose. And George W. Bush was like, nah, it's fine. You should do an election anyway. And then, of course, because of the unimaginable unpopularity of the Palestinian Authority and what had become of the, Palestinian Authority as a collaborative institution to the Israeli security and apparatus of oppression, Hamas did end up winning the plurality of votes in Gaza. And then George W. Bush was like, oops, we didn't think that was what was going to happen. So then they tried to facilitate a coup, and then Hamas won in the aftermath of that coup as well. There was a lot of torture and a lot of horrible things that Fatah did. And eventually, Hamas became the de facto ruler of Gaza. That's how Hamas came into a permanent position of power in Gaza. All because of American interference. What is this? Will Stancil lives in whatever fictions will accommodate him at this moment when Biden was suffering the slings and arrows of public backlash over his dick riding of Netanyahu and his claims he had no power over Israel's actions in Gaza. Genocide Democrat Will Stancil stepped up to back him up. It feels like part of what is making Gaza politics so difficult is that there's a list of things Biden can and should do, but he cannot end the war with a phone call. Oh yeah, this was at the time I kept saying this is a one phone call situation. That was the pop and combo, and he was Mr. It's not one phone call. But my point is, I think now that Will Stancil is engaged in honest resistance against an oppressive, dare I say, almost colonial style occupation in his backyard, maybe he understands the concept of taking up arms against a settler colonial occupation that has lasted for multiple decades, almost a century at this point, you know? That's why I have hope in my heart that these guys, these liberals, will actually learn the right lesson. And the reason why I think this is a little bit different, than last time around, like BLM specifically, is low-key because the Democrats are just not there. They're not doing enough. Okay? They're not doing enough. So these guys are actually forced to recognize the reality that the duopoly is not going to save them, that the Democratic Party is not doing anything to save them, really. Because remember that this is not... Donald Trump's pullout of Minneapolis is imminent. But I need you to understand something. That's not the reason why the Democrats are not the reason why Donald Trump is pulling out of Minneapolis. It's because of the population, okay? Gregory Bovino gets demoted. Border Patrol chief was a public face of traveling immigration crackdowns on cities governed by Democrats. Hold on. As someone who had the lowest possible expectations for Democratic leadership and electors, watching Democrats in Congress see my neighbors brutalized by a government hell-bent on causing us harm and then clumsily change the topic is radicalizing. Yes! Oh, yes! That's what I'm talking about. If you got any reactionary feeling in your heart, and liberalism is more reactionary, let's be real, than socialism is, you are inevitably going to realize the same thing that Republicans realize when it happens to them. Here you have a die-hard liberal going through the fucking motions. He's going through it. They can't be salvaged. They must be removed and replaced so my city and neighbors can be free again. That's what I'm talking about, dude. Will Stancil, you are a lion. Okay? You are a lion in both your heart, soul, and actions, my friend. You have actually shown me that change is possible. I love this. I love seeing this. I want more of this. A true lion, a man amongst babies. Hopefully this radicalization continues and Will Stancil joins his local DSA. Give it a couple years. Give it a couple years to be leading the vanguard. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I don't want to lean into this memeing too much because I think people are going to say, "Oh, you love hyping up white boys or whatever." I know people love saying that kind of stuff. I think we should cherish and support people changing their mentality. Okay? Yeah, give it a couple years. Will Stancil's going to be robbing banks like Stalin to fund the revolution. Bovine Bovino is out, ladies and gentlemen. It's a moment of glory. Let's just do the breaking news.
Minneapolis and to a Fox News alert. Multiple sources telling Fox News Bill Malhusian, Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino, and some, not all, Border Patrol agents are leaving Minneapolis as soon as tomorrow. More on that as we get it. But in the meantime, a big talking point on the left has been that all of this has never been about immigration. With states like California and Texas, illegal immigration population far above that of Minnesota. But we're digging into why this chaos is happening in Minnesota, but not other places.
Governor Walz, Mayor Fry, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. If Governor Walz and Mayor Fry implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions.
The numbers back that up when it comes to states working with the feds. A recent report shows Texas and Florida are the top two states for ICE arrests. Is that because those areas cooperate with the federal government on enforcement? Joining me now, former acting ICE director Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, let's just clarify the talking point and the reality. The talking point is that all of this is going on in Minnesota for political reasons, and that they're not concentrating resources, DHS, into places like Texas and Florida where there are more illegal immigrants. But the stats show, in fact, there are more arrests happening in Texas and Florida. So why don't the streets look like they do in Minnesota?
Yeah, exactly. They've had 40,000 people arrested and deported from Florida. And it is all political, but not the way they're making it seem. It's political because of people like Fry and Walz insisting on these sanctuary cities doing everything they can to thwart ICE and make their job harder, thereby inviting more ICE agents in. So, yes, it's political, but on their part, and they want this fight. And your earlier conversation with Julian was just spot on about democracy. Our democracy can't work if laws are not enforced. But remember what Minnesota's doing, the most important part of the Democrats' open border scheme is to...
Yeah, that's why it's a major problem that there's an unaccountable enemy foreign force engaging in a domestic occupation. Yeah, exactly.
Keep the illegal aliens here for electoral reasons. That's all this is about. They don't care about keeping ICE out. They care about keeping illegal aliens here. And that's what it's about, but it's politics, but on the other side.
The mechanical detail that makes the numbers disproportionate in terms of presence on the streets of Minneapolis versus, say, the streets of Dallas is that if a locality honors an ICE detainer, then it only takes one ICE agent to pick up a criminal illegal alien from a jail. But if you, like they do with under Jacob Fry in Minneapolis, release the criminal back onto the streets, now it takes a team to go get that guy on the streets. But I do want to ask you about this breaking news, Jonathan. Greg Bovino and some Border Patrol might be leaving Minneapolis as soon as tomorrow. It's hard to interpret that. I would have to think the mob, the chaos, the agitators, the insurgents will take that as a victory.
The only people that don't immediately
go to jail, citizen or non-citizen, are people who are non-violent offenders, okay? There is no world where someone who is like a serial killer gets released to the streets. The problem these guys have is that non-violent offenders that are like, I don't know, getting hit with like a trespass or something, if they're undocumented, of course, wait out for their court dates. They don't get thrown in prison because that would be insane. That's the only type of people, that is the only type of like undocumented migrant that doesn't instantly go to jail.
Yeah, that would be a concern that they take it as a victory. But one way of looking at it, they've been very effective. I think they've removed 3,000 people during the surge. So they've really got most of what they initially went in there for. And maybe during that call between President Trump and Governor Walz, there were some assurances of some cooperation between ICE and the local officials. And maybe that's part of the deal. Hey, because you're right, all you need is one guy to get him out of a jail. And Todd Lyons was talking about the other day on Fox that you need 10 to 15 agents now, because now you need agents to protect agents, and it's still far more unsafe. So
boo-hoo. Aw. No, you can't just like kidnap neighbors like that. That's crazy.
Hopefully they're getting cooperation, but they have been very effective, putting all this aside, in terms of arresting illegal aliens and criminally illegal aliens in Minnesota.
Yeah, but you go into the streets to arrest these guys with a team of 10 or 15, and then you also have to protect your own flank from the rioters in the streets. You have to protect yourself from, I don't know, the trash cans, the armed rioters, and so forth, the brick throwers, the car rammers. It's just a spiraling situation based upon the idea that you won't enforce democratic laws. We'll see if that changes. We'll see if Walz and Fry actually violate their own sanctuary city policies now to hand over the final remaining violent criminals, illegal aliens, to the federal government. John?
That's a lie. There is no violent criminal. There is no violent criminal that's not deportable. There is no violent criminal undocumented migrant that the Department of Corrections in the state of Minnesota will not release. The only time where they refuse to release it is if a court will literally say the place that you're releasing them to is CCOT, which is the only other prison system in the United States of America that is worse than the American prison system, and therefore this would be a violation of this prisoner's human rights. For those of you who don't know ball, let me explain something to you. Norway, for example, has a de facto non-extradition policy to the United States of America. Now, of course, Norway is a cooperative nation. Why would they not extradite prisoners to the United States of America? The reason for why is because Norwegian courts have found out that the conditions in American prisons are so horrible that it would be a human rights violation if you were to send a prisoner that has done a crime in Norway back to the United States of America to carry out the rest of their sentence in an American prison. The only other place on the planet that American judges so far have refused to send American prisoners to, undocumented migrant prisoners to, is CCOT. I know for a fact, I know there are immigration attorneys who have been able to successfully stop the deportation process for MS-13 gang members. Like actual MS-13 gang members who are undocumented migrants who are obviously serving their prison sentence in the United States of America. And they have been able to successfully stop deportation proceedings because the courts realize, or the courts acknowledge, that the conditions in CCOT are so subpar that it is considered a human rights violation by the American courts. They're so inhumane that American courts have stopped ICE from trying to deport MS-13 gang members, like actual gang members who have done heinous crimes. Isn't that crazy? With the exception of like a lone judge that's somewhat woke, you are not going to have a system where like the Department of Corrections will still hand over prisoners regardless, okay? The Department of Corrections will hand over prisoners regardless to ICE. They will always do it. Let's see what Abdul is saying.
So why the is my government killing people with my tax dollars in my name? I was in Minneapolis last Monday, and I remember hearing the jarring sounds of whistles that you hear at soccer practice on every corner. It's become the sound of an imminent ICE raid. That's what it sounds like when your government occupies a city in your country instead of funding your health care. Now, it's not lost on me that Alex Preddy was a nurse who worked at the VA a VA that has been massively underfunded. And if that's not a metaphor for how our country is working under Donald Trump, I don't know what is. You've got literally somebody who's spending his life taking care.
The discombobulator thing is so stupid, dude. I don't know what the hell. I feel like it's fake. I have no opinion. I have no opinion on that.
Care of veterans in an institution that exists to take care of people who served their country that is being underfunded, and instead you've got ICE, an agency that is being funded to the tune of $185 billion, that killed him because he was willing to videotape them, because we have First Amendment rights in this country. I've been very clear, we've got to abolish ICE, because if we believe in our Constitution, ICE is everything the Constitution was intended to protect you from. This can't be.
Johnson had said something about ICE. I forgot what he said.
He said abolish it because he's not a pussy.
Yeah.
Yep.
That easy, gang.
Zoran Mamdani said abolish it because he's not a pussy.
Not a pussy.
Yep.
Yeah. Zoran
That's my
sat
right
there and
line.
said
You
that.
niggas don't say it. You're a pussy.
You're a pussy.
You're a pussy.
Straight like
Alright,
that.
cool. It's straight like that because what are we doing at this point?
Yeah,
Stop it. This
yeah.
this was created for a purpose, the purpose that is not serving right now. And if your foreign policy ambitions match up with where we should be domestically, you'd make that call: abolish ICE, end the wars, and the.
Trump just showed off the discombobulator. Beauty begins the moment you decide to be yourself. Coco Chanel. Why are you doing this? Yeah. Laura Loomer, she's a free spirit. We used her as a discombobulator. Everyone was discombobulated. Discombobulated. Laura Loomer. She's so loopy and so loomy. She looms. What Abdul's opponent said, if you didn't see.
Many of you, I am horrified and heartbroken watching video after video, and the more that we learn about the murder of Alex Preety in Minnesota, the clearer it is that this is an agency gone completely rogue.
Bye-bye.
ICE is invading our communities with masked agents, terrorizing our communities, often without the support of local law enforcement and local leaders. It needs a complete overhaul. So on the state level, my colleagues so far have introduced legislation to prohibit ICE agents from
Complete overhaul, you say? I think cops need a complete overhaul. I think local policing needs a complete overhaul. I don't think ICE needs a complete overhaul. I think ICE needs prosecutions, and ICE needs not reform, but abolition. Okay? Because this is like, I say it's a rogue agency, but it's not correct. It's technically not correct to call this a rogue agency because they are operating at the direction of the government. They're doing exactly what this agency was tasked to do. Trump is just taking it to its logical limit. She takes money from Israel? No, I know. I know she does.
Wearing masks, require identification to protect sensitive locations like schools and churches.
Not as much
and
as
given the recent
Haley
news out of the Trump
Stevens,
administration, we must also reaffirm Michiganders' rights to safety and security in your home and prohibit warrantless home entry. Now, on the federal level, Republicans and Democrats alike should come together and deny DHS 1 penny more until complete overhaul and accountability of this agency, and that includes the following. Number one, fire any of the agents hired over the last year into this agency who do not meet the most basic requirements of what we expect out of any of our law enforcement officers. We need clear identification, prohibition of masks, and accountability across the board. ICE must prioritize danger.
The irony is, if you come to the table with abolish ICE, then you could get these provisions, even though these provisions are not enough. If you come to the table with, we're going to prosecute ICE, then you can maybe even abolish ICE. If you come to the table with, we're going to do firing squads on ICE, then you can get prosecute ICE. But if you come to the table with this compromise position, you're not going to get the compromise you were looking for at all. Abdul's comms director, yeah, she cooked. She said, that's a lot of words. 2 I didn't hear. Abolish ICE. Conservatives, ICE should kill people. Democrats, ICE should wear body cameras when killing people. That's basically what this is, okay? There's never been a moment in the history of contemporary politics where the Republican Party has come to the table pre-compromised. They never do that. That has never happened, okay? Republicans will literally be like, we should punish women for getting an abortion. And then they make abortion illegal. Like, they rarely ever compromise in general. They always keep throwing more bills at the problem over and over again. The idea that Democrats are supposed to come to the bargaining process conceding in advance is so insane. I can't stand this mentality. And it's once again another reminder, as Jeet here also says, this victory was won by ordinary people putting their lives on the line in the streets of Minneapolis while almost all their elected leaders kept quiet or made only muted criticism. Okay? This scale back of ICE activities, this siege against the Twin Cities, against Minnesota, is going to end. And it is only going to end because the people got together and they resisted, actually resisted, not like wear the pussy hats and say, we're going to vote them out. Like actually straight up said, we're going to take our cars and we're going to drive our cars around. Shit that a competent local administrator would get the police on board with. Okay. Dude, you can't just say his name like that, Lamau. I can, because that's his name. I'm sorry that a bunch of neo-Nazis have decided to use his name as a slur. Like, that's insane. That's his name, brother. What are you talking about? And I've been saying his name for years, and I will continue to say his name. Even as the Trump administration murders Minnesotans in the streets, they can't help but attack our state on other fronts. The press releases from today. U.S. Department of Education and Health and Human Services refer Minnesota case to U.S. Department of Justice for Title IX non-compliance. That's awesome. It's because Minnesota has protected trans students, for the record. That's why they're doing it. God, this administration is so ass.
Criminals, not going after American citizens, not going after anybody without a criminal conviction. This is the priority of this agency, keeping our communities safe, not terrorizing our communities. They need to stop warrantless searches. We need thorough vetting and training of all officers to ensure that the highest standards that we expect of any of our law enforcement officers are consistent in ICE. They must have strict use of force policies with real ramifications and consequences if those policies are violated, and they must stop detaining American citizens. Anything less in this moment is a failure to meet this moment. And
yeah, we need to give them more money so they can train, just like with the cops. That worked out real well.